True story. My wife and I were on vacation. We're at a restaurant, okay? Where I've got my chicken, my chicken fingers dipping in my honey mustard sauce. Yeah, some of y'all know what I'm talking about. Well, we hear the couple behind us. My name's Ahi, by the way. I hear this couple behind us, and I hear it start getting heated a little bit. And I'm kind of tuning in, being my little bit of my nosy sides kicking back in there. I hear this couple escalating. Then I hear this statement. I don't want to get into this right now. And then I hear an elevated voice. She comes back with, "I don't care who can hear," right? And I'm like, okay. At this time, oh my, here we go, here we go. So I'll get my popcorn now. I'm like, oh, it's about to go down. Yeah, I was that guy, you know. Oh, and it explodes, of course. I mean, it builds, it builds, it builds. Boom! Right. So what happens here is what you have is two people, and Christians, if you're Christian and you're married, hear me on this, okay? Because listen, there is conflict that arises in the marriages. I don't care where your background is. But the way that the conflict happens is totally different depending on your personality type. So there are a couple of personality types. This is gonna be cut short. I'm gonna give you the abbreviated version, and then if you want the full version, you have to let me know, and I'm gonna get that out to you. I'll drop the link in the chats or in the comments or somewhere, and get you the full video here. I'm gonna break this stuff down in detail. But for you fast swipers, here you go. There are a couple of three main categories of how your spouse is, and knowing where they're at. GI Joe used to say, "Knowing is half the battle," right? Knowing is half the battle. Knowing what your spouse is important. So there's responders, right? Responders, they just want to get it out. They need to get what's inside of them out at all costs. They just need to, sometimes we call it blowing the lid. Okay. They just need to get it out. All right. Then you have your agreeers, right? Agreeers just want to agree. We just want to get along. Can't we just agree to disagree? And the responders like, no, right? But that's all they just want to, they need to agree. They want to agree. Then there's the understanders, all right? Understanders are individuals that they have to be understood. If they're not understood, we're not done. This conversation isn't done until I get clear understanding. Now we all bounce around in these different categories, but the goal is to get to this last category. And that category is a de-escalator. De-escalators are masterful with dealing with conflict because while they still fulfill their role, because you can be a responder, you can be an agreeer, you can be an understander, right? You can be any of these things and be a de-escalator. And if you can be the de-escalator portion, you can actually take conflict and turn it into something positive. Now, here's the deal. All right, if you want to hear more, I'm about to go into detail about each one of these pieces, because if you have a responder with responder, cool, actually. It's a myth that's saying that people that get into it and argue can't have a healthy, fulfilling marriage. It's not true. Everybody gets into it. It's also a myth that says couples that are agreeer, they just agree not to really, they never really, if something tense comes up, they both just kind of talk it down. Now, you can't pretend if you're not truly an agreeer and you're really a responder trying to be an agreeer, not going to work. But two agreeers together, they can work. They can have a very healthy, fulfilled marriage. And all the conflict stuff, they kind of just nail it, water it down and agree, and it works, okay? Here's the problem though. You get a responder with an agreeer, right? Or an agreeer with an understander, right? Like, I hear you agreeing with me, but you don't understand me, okay? That's not okay. I'm not just looking for agreement. That's when it gets crazy. That's when it gets really, really intense. I'm about to break each one of these pieces down and what we do, how we navigate this to make it into a healthy interaction. So it's not me watching you at dinner, right? Like, yeah, did you hear that? And it gets awkward for the whole place, okay? If you've ever been in that space, let me know. But here we go. So those are still here. I'm gonna keep going now. Here's the full video. I'm gonna slow it down just a little bit because I want you to really get this. When you're talking about a responder, I want to talk to you about that. The responders are individuals. A couple things. They're usually extroverts, usually, not always. But they're usually extroverts. I did a video, it's called How People Break, How Your Spouse Breaks, right? They usually break from the outside in, meaning that when something happens, they're feeling bad, you're gonna know it. You're gonna see it on their face, you're gonna see it how they act. They want you to know how they feel and what they think about how they feel, okay? They're very outward in. By the time it gets very deep, you've known for a long time that, hey, there's a problem here. Hey, here's what I'm feeling. Here's where I'm coming from. That's a responder. And I'm going to get into what we do with this information here in a second here. First, I want to understand a little about a responder. Responders want to get their message, they want to get it out of their mouth. Even if you don't understand it all, they need to get it out of their system. Otherwise, they feel like they will explode. Like they feel like they will literally and smoke just KO'd, okay? So they usually break from the outside in. So it's very apparent who they are, what they're doing, what they feel. Let's keep going. The agreeer now, the agreeer, they are typically, not always, but some stereotypically, but everybody can flow into each of these. It's not a one fits all, but you'll have your home, you'll have your predominant, and you'll see these things in your spouse. You'll be like, I see what I'm dealing with here. An agreeer, again, the agreeer, a lot of times they're introverts, and a lot of times they will break from the inside out. They just want peace. Okay, they want peace. And here's the thing about agreeers, right? Agreeers, because they break from the inside out, that means they start feeling stuff, they start feeling tension, they start feeling discontent, and this gets pushed down a little bit. Like, it's okay, I can handle this. I can handle that. That's not that big of a deal. All the responders are already like, what? You left the syrup, or you put the syrup in the refrigerator? By the way, if you put syrup in the refrigerator, stop doing that. Okay, not okay, not okay. So anyway, the responders out there, the agreeer is building this stuff up, minimizing a lot of things, like, oh, it's okay for the sake of agreement. The problem is, especially with the introverts, is by the time it gets to the outside and they start dropping hints, a responder might think it's very soft or surface level. But understand, if you're working with an agreeer or that person that breaks from the inside out, understand there's already been a whirlwind going on inside, earthquake, volcano, okay? And it can go from 0 to 1,000 like now, because it's all built up. It's all built up. And the responders, it frustrates them because they're like, why don't you just let it out? Because they're not like you, right? And the agreeers like, man, just that's not that big of a deal. Push it down. They're not like you. God created us different. But when we understand this about our spouse, we can navigate some things a lot better. For a responder, here's the deal: when they bring up a situation to talk about, you got to talk about it, right? If you can, you gotta speak to it right then in that moment, right? Let's chat it out. Let me tell you exactly how I feel. For the agreeer, or for the one that breaks from the inside out, you've got to understand, you have to check in with that person. You actually have to, and I know it's hard. You can see why it can get difficult if you're a responder and you're an agreeer, right? And I'm about to jump to the understander here in a second. If you're in those spaces, it's hard because you want them to just be like me, right? And everything would be fine. And you're right, but it can go either way. If you're both, man, my brain just went blank for a second. If you're both agreeers, right? Or if you're both responders, okay, yeah, you can work with that. Now let's jump on. But the deal is, you have to check in with with people that break from the inside out. You have to check in on them. How you doing? How you really doing? Okay. If you weren't doing okay, how would you be doing? Right? A responder, they need to get it out. Sometimes what they say isn't actually what they mean. They're still figuring it out while it's coming out, right? They're figuring it out, and you have to give grace for them, right? Let them say, hey, okay, that's not what I meant, and be like, oh, well, that is what you meant because you said, and you can see how someone that's from the inside out, or an agreeer, that they're saying, if you said it, that means you must just be filled with it. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speak. By the way, that verse has never saved any marriages, okay, ever, or benefited. So cross that out. We can talk about the context in a different video there. But let's keep going. The understander now. I'll talk to you about the understander. The understander needs to be understood, okay? They may come across as a responder. They may come across as an agreeer, but they're not at peace until they're not at peace with this in agreement. Don't just try to agree. Well, let's agree to disagree. But do you understand what I'm saying? Like, I don't understand what you're saying. Well, that's a problem, right? They can't get past that. They're going to be stuck, right? And so they can come across responder, quickly bring it up. They can break from inside out or outside in, either one, but they must be understood. Now, everybody needs to be understood. If you've ever seen our stuff on communication, it's as a critical point of having five transformational stages of communication. Understanding is huge, but understanders are on another level with it. And if your spouse is in this area, you have to understand that even if you don't agree with them, if you can just understand them, it's like a pressure valve, you know. They used to make these little torture devices to pump up your air tire, right? They had these little tubes, and you'd pump them, right? And I don't know if they still make them. You have to stand on them, right? And it had a little pedal on the side, and you'd pump this pedal down. Now, a lot of you guys don't know it. And then your foot would slip off every like 10th or 15th, and the metal would slice up your leg. It's back in, 80s, early 90s inventions to really toughen up people, bike riders in those days. But anyway, it's like that. You're pumping and it's building up all this pressure. And if you understand them, you can now release some of that tension that's built up. So what do we do with all of this? If I'm a responder, if I'm an agreeer, if my spouse is a responder, agreeer, an understander, here's the goal. Okay, here's the man, I wish I had a good word there. I was hoping it would come. You try to keep talking, hope it comes. Nothing came there, guys. So sorry, we just got to keep going with it. A de-escalator. Now, a de-escalator is where no matter where you're at in the course of a conflict or during as it's building up, you know how to cause there to be a de-escalation. Now, 2 ninja tips. I'm not gonna give you a bunch because I want to wrap this deal up. Don't just spend too much time, but 2 ninja tips on how you actually de-escalate, okay? And it's different for men and women. Now, I'm giving you the averages here, but they're extreme averages, right? Typically, ladies, if you want to de-escalate a situation, okay, for a man, now ladies to men, this is important, use humor, all right? It's getting up, use something humorous to de-escalate as it's building hey, this isn't going a good direction. Use humor, right? And even in a mildly healthy relationship, typically when the wife tries to introduce some humor in the midst of conflict, it's a type of repair attempt. It actually works to reduce the heart rate, to reduce the blood, to reduce what we call flooding. And what happens in flooding is the blood literally pulls out of the logic center of the brain. And males get here a lot faster than women. Biologically, we do. But when it happens, it pulls the blood out of the logic center of your brain and pushes it into places like the brain stem and the what's called the animal brain. This fight, flight, react. We're not able to truly process a good conversation. So what do? Ladies, when it starts getting to that space, use humor, okay? Men, fellas, hear me. Don't try to use humor, okay? Doesn't work. Now, everything we bring to you is based on decades and decades and decades of research, 40, 50, 60 years of research. That's the stuff that we want to bring to the table. Listen, doesn't work, okay? It rarely, if ever, works, especially if the wife's in an elevated state of upsetness, right? And that's the scientific term. Don't try to crack a good Chuck Norris joke. Although I'm good for a good Chuck Norris joke. I have some jumping in my head right now that I'm having to push down, right? I'll just think about that murderous tire bike for a second to get me to kick that Chuck Norris joke out of my brain. So what do we do, men? You ready for it, men? Self-acknowledgement and compromise. Okay? What do I mean by that? Self-acknowledgement, simply saying, here's where I went wrong in the conversation, or here's what I must have discommuted wrong. Taking some form of blame. I know you're like, oh, I'm not taking any blame, right? Somewhere in there, you can find some blame if you want to de-escalate, right? If you're trying to work with someone that's not your type and you need to de-escalate it so you can find agreement, you can find understanding, or you can get to a healthy response, taking some type of responsibility. You have to take responsibility for everything, but find those things in there like, hey, and don't add a but on it. Just take responsibility for your part. You don't have but you've lost it, okay? I'm just showing you how you actually can use these ninja tips to de-escalate. Take responsibility and compromise. For whatever reason, ladies, this doesn't happen. This doesn't work for men, okay? You're trying to de-escalate and it's getting tense and you just start trying to throwing out compromises. It doesn't work, but gentlemen, for the ladies, actually compromising, giving away that feeling of, hey, okay, you actually have some influence in this space, right? You actually can affect where I'm at. Easy to say on a video, right? Not easy live. So you need to practice these things. You need to rehearse them in your brain. Think about them. Watch this video a couple of times. Get it down into you. Understand different type of people. Pinpoint where your spouse is. If you guys are both the same, awesome. Still the responders, make sure you do use some de-escalation tools, right? You don't want it to get too crazy. But again, you're able to have those conversations. They're upfront, they're forward, they're passionate, and it's done, right? Okay, cool. But when there's mismatches, it's important to introduce the de-escalators. Now, there are a bunch of de-escalators. I'm just giving you some of the effective ones that are more successful more of the time than other ones that are out there. So ladies, use humor, introduce some levity, right? That affects him. Fellas, compromise. Take some self blame in there. Find out the portion that you're responsible for and identify it and say, oh, okay, here's where I can see where I could be missing it. Here's a compromise that I could do. Or why don't we meet in the middle here? Okay. Now that even works with responders, even if it's not agree. I'm talking, this is just a blanket piece, 2 ninja tips. Listen, God bless you. Hope this helps you. Hope this helps you, gives you a couple more tools to keep on being Christian marrieds in a society that needs it like never before. God bless you. Get out there and be awesome. Take care.